Anybody here can get it. Treat the game like a scrimmage now. Master B with the flow. I swear nigga got no limits now. I've been ballin' for a minute. Whole team full of winners. Anybody here can get it. You tuned into the realest now. Anybody here can get it. Treat the game like a scrimmage now. Master B with the flow. I swear nigga got no limits now. I've been ballin' for a minute.
Competing, I was out at the Arnold, and I had and I met him in person. But like even like 10 years prior to that, he and I were both just on a internet forum for like bodybuilding, powerlifting stuff, and I just was barely 18, you know. I was always just a meathead, and the internet was pretty new, and I only recognized him from the picture. Like his name was Jackass, and he was into pro wrestling at the time. And he contributed a lot. I just read stuff. I wasn't like a forum poster, never have been. And then I see him 10 years later, and he's got this little piece of elastic. He's like, "Oh, this is I just came out with this. It's called the slingshot." And it's just the blue one, the original one. And I'm chatting with him, and in my mind, you know, I'm thinking like, this. I mean, I don't see this being a successful nothing's going to happen with this. But what did I know? And then
it seems a bit too simple, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And sometimes the best ideas are like
exactly.
the quintessential example of that is like the Post-it. You know, like who would have thought, a little piece of paper with a little adhesive on one end? But
that was an accident too, wasn't it? They didn't intentionally go out to create the Post-it from. That's my answer.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like, let's create something else, and hey, somebody else created this accidentally. Let's say it's all we got. Let's market it and boom.
Yeah.
Right, should we make a start? I'm actually going to keep that part of the recording because that was quite good. Actually, a little insight into Mark Bell.
All good.
All right, welcome everybody to Off the Platform episode 15. Jackson, we at 15 now?
I think we're at 17, dude.
16, 17. I might just stop saying the episodes because it's getting confusing.
Yeah, we're just Off the Platform.
I'm Greg. Obviously we've got Jackson with us today. Welcome, Jackson.
How you doing? How you doing? All right?
Yeah, good, mate. And we have a very special guest today, Andrew Herbert. How are you, Andrew?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So let me just quickly introduce Andrew. He's a former three-time all-time world record-holding powerlifter in the 242 class. Is that correct, Andrew?
Yes, sir.
Yes, and animal cage veteran. So we'll, for those who don't know what the animal cage is, we'll be going through that at some point as well. So also you're in California?
Yep, Bay Area,
California, police officer, EMT, and firefighter. So what's an EMT? I saw that on the description.
So it stands for emergency medical technician. And so out here, like whenever you see an ambulance rolling around, and as well as a fire engine in most like big cities, it'll have EMTs on it and it'll have paramedics. And so the EMT is the less advanced version. So the EMTs are able to practice BLS, which is basic life support, whereas paramedics are able to practice ALS, which is advanced life support. And so both will do CPR, all kinds of, lots of things, but the paramedics in addition can start IVs and push drugs into a person, do special defibrillation outside of just the automatic defibrillation of a heart. They can intubate, things like that. They're advanced techniques that require a lot more training, basically.
Yeah, and is that pretty standard?
So I mean, I think across the United States it is. I mean, I became an EMT. I've been only in California. I've been an EMT, and a lot of it is state and then county regulated. So I really only know the California perspective on it, but it's moving in that direction. Like I think a few decades ago, like a lot of firefighters were just plain firefighters, and they realized that it behooves them to combine the emergency medical aspect with the firefighting aspect, because they'll typically get to a scene fast because firehouses are geographically located to cover the most area to be close. Like in a given city, they'll have say 5 firehouses spaced out ideally to get to where they have to go as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And so with whether it's a fire or a medical call, it kind of same idea. And I think also, fires themselves actually become more and more rare. Like what I tell people is that firefighters actually don't do a whole lot of firefighting, and with sprinkler systems, different code enforcement, building materials, fire extinguishers, all these things are preventing actual fires from happening. So like in my time, I've been to hundreds of emergency medical calls. I've only fought maybe not that many fires really. You know what I mean? It's clearly a medical thing, and so getting into EMS kind of keeps the industry relevant. You know,
over here at least, we've had some instances where we've called out the emergency services, and the firefighters are usually the first to arrive, and these are for like medical events. I know when my oldest son was having trouble breathing. He had like a croup thing going on. The firefighters were the first there with the oxygen. And I know for traffic accidents with cars, automobiles, and so forth, that the firefighters are the first out there.
Yeah, and that's why at this point, like at least throughout all California, like the term is firefighter / EMT, but it's kind of redundant. Every firefighter is basically an EMT. The difference would be the wildland or the forestry firefighters, because that's a whole different game. Like those are the folks out in the very, remote areas fighting the forest fires, where there isn't as much really, the medical component isn't there, and that's largely state and federal run rather than county run.
Okay. Sorry, Jackson, I cut you off there before.
Oh no, I was going to say the car crash thing, because obviously for us, firefighters are usually the first on the scene for like vehicle accidents and stuff. So that makes sense if they're obviously medically trained and.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Because in that, like so the term is auto extrication, and if someone's trapped, and that's a whole. I hate to call it fun because it's a tragic situation, but the training for it is because there's some very powerful hydraulic machinery and tools that we use, and people call it the jaws of life, but there is no one jaws of life. There's multiple things that are all considered the jaws of life, where you can really just cut car doors off, and that's where you're really doing a lot of kind of heavy manual labor to get into a car, stabilize a car, get into a car. The car might be upside down, it might be on its side, but do it in such a way that it does not affect the passengers as much, and it allows you to remove them in such a way that obviously preserves like their cervical spine and things like that.
Do you ever get the do the boys ever make you like pick up the car, or like, you know what I mean, like do you get like the heavy lifting sort of thing, like
just like how the fires are much less common. I mean, also the real auto extrication incidents are not super common either, and the bulk of my career has not been strictly in the fire side, so I haven't been to much of those actual scenes myself. But I mean, the one area where like the lifting of the car could happen is where, so ideally you want to get a car off its wheels so that there's no way it could roll or anything like that. So, and if it's messed up, you can't engage the emergency brake or anything like that. So then we use things called chocks, where you're jamming it under the wheels, but also use levers to just lift the car off the ground like an inch. And so in training, I've done that, but outside of that, it's kind of like whoever's there first, that's like the first thing you got to do.
Just get amongst. I assume like most of the people you work with are probably pretty would be very physically strong anyway, because there'd be so much testing that goes into it beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, I think and this goes with both police and fire stuff. A lot of people love to point out the really out of shape cops on the street and stuff like that, and there's out of shape firefighters too. I mean, I think typically that happens over time. I mean, if you look at fresh rookies, academy graduates on either side, they're generally in pretty darn good shape. I mean, I remember, obviously I've done both academies, and there's a lot, to get in, you have to establish, to even get offered a position, you have to establish a baseline physical fitness. But to pass through the academy, you have to be in pretty good shape. It's really, people let themselves go after that point. And that's where the topic of maintaining kind of fitness qualifications or standards comes into play. And I there's pros and cons of that, but
it's kind of like marriage. Like you go into the marriage.
That's actually very good analogy.
Yeah, but
you don't have to try anymore.
15 years later, your face is covered in hair, and exactly. You definitely let it go. Unfortunately, cameras about this type. Yep.
You know that we're all going to be like talking our way out of that comment later on. When this goes to air, we went, no, we didn't mean it.
Exactly.
Right. Oh yeah.
Well, Jackson's only a year into marriage, so he's obviously still maintaining pretty.
So I
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Still got to keep her interested, you know.
Yeah. All right, Andrew. I feel like we've probably jumped ahead a few decades in terms of into your career, but if we can step back and just give the folks at home a bit of a history lesson, where'd you come from? Because powerlifting is new to you, looking at your open powerlifting records, things started around about the age 30, and I think you mentioned that on another podcast as well. So you discovered, or did you discover powerlifting late, or did you just discover competitive powerlifting late?
So I would say I discovered powerlifting as a sport early, but more just like as far as knowledge of it. Competitive powerlifting, or even the interest in competing, didn't come till much later, and that's definitely one of those hindsight is 2020 things where I'm constantly kicking myself like, okay, Andrew, why did you not start competing earlier? And I don't have a very good answer for that. A lot of us, when we look back on our life, we can't rationalize why we made certain decisions, back in the day, or didn't make certain decisions. But I'd always been very, I guess, physical and into strength and things like that. And I'd been, I think, just genetically also gifted in terms of being strong. So those two kind of went together. And so, I mean, starting at age maybe 7 or 8, I really started, it was mostly push-ups, sit-ups and stuff like that. But I mean, I begged my dad for some dumbbells and he got me some dumbbells. So it was very early that I was into that stuff. But it wasn't with the mindset of competing in it. It was just, I want to be strong. And so that I don't get picked on or I can, do better in the fights on the schoolyard, that kind, that kind of stuff. And or just the status of, whatever. And I played normal quote unquote sports. And that goes all the way up through really till, when I started competing around the age of 30, and my main sport ended up being wrestling. And then I also got into Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So I could just overall say I was really into grappling. My best asset within grappling was always strength. Like I would, roll with guys, high level guys too. And they're like, good. Am I allowed to swear on here?
Yeah, go if you like. I've heard it all.
Fuck, you're strong, and like that was so, as opposed to other physical capacities, like, I was relatively quick, I had good endurance. But no one's gonna be like, wow, you're amazingly flexible or any, no, but it was like, okay, wow, you're really strong. And I enjoyed lifting. So I lifted a lot on the side, but it was still always secondary. And so then it wasn't until maybe the mid to late 20s when I knew, okay, the grappling stuff I'm done with college. And I was working, with the job at that time, I was working a lot of overtime, and kind of just the training went by the wayside, and I was just in the gym. And thankfully it was some guys in the gym who were already competing in powerlifting or getting into it that pushed me into giving it a shot. And I tried it. And that was one of those things where the very first meet I did, I knew, okay, this is awesome. I love this. Yeah.
Now, I know you've talked about your parents a lot in previous podcasts, because they were quite academic, yeah? So was there any kind of push for them to you to establish yourself in a sport or do sports? And where I don't know what the sporting landscape is like for kids over in the US. There's there can be a lot of pressure here in New Zealand for kids to at least pick up one of the top 3 sports. I don't know, Jackson, would you agree on that one?
Yeah, man.
Rugby league, cricket to a certain degree, football, I think is coming up there as well. But there's always that expectation that your child's going to at least do one sport. There has to be some activity.
Gotcha. So in terms of athletics, my parents weren't very pressuring to me about that. Academically, absolutely. Yeah, it was, and just, in life in general, like, don't get in trouble, do good in school, and do other activities, like, I mean, they didn't want me to just be academically inclined, but whatever those activities weren't so, whether it was, my dad likes music, so he wanted me to play an instrument. So he actually kind of forced me to play an instrument for a few years until I was like, I kept saying like, I don't want to do this. And
you eventually have to listen. Yeah.
And eventually I think he realized I wasn't going to be in any symphonies. So it allowed me to quit that. But yeah, the athletic thing, it was, it was clear that I was intrinsically motivated to that kind of stuff, and they just, I guess, supported it as it went along. My dad had been an athlete his whole life. I mean, his big thing, like he always told me about, sound mind and a sound body. I think Plato was the original kind of philosopher who coined that term, and that was the big. He was like, he wants me to be physically strong and in a sense, and mentally strong as well. He says you gotta have both, and I even remember there was a presidential election, and I don't think I was 18 yet, but it was Bill Bradley. I don't know if you guys have heard of Bill Bradley, but he had been a NBA basketball player, and then he got into I think the Senate. He was a Senate, and then he ran for president. I don't think he made it to be the top guy for, I think he was a Democrat. And I can't remember, he might have gone against Bill Clinton or I don't know, but for the nomination. So he didn't get that, but he was like a front runner. And I remember in one of the debates, I think, or interviews, they asked him kind of, how do you describe yourself? And Bill Bradley said, I would describe myself as an intellectual jock. And my dad really kind of latched, like Bill Bradley had gone to Princeton, like he was, an academic guy, but he was also an NBA basketball player too. So, and my dad always kind of pushed that on me too. He's like, I want you to be both. Like that's important.
I think most people, it's a shame if you can't do some degree of both. If you know
Absolutely.
what I mean, like.
Well, I think you should too. I think the two are
100%. They support each other.
They're tied together, aren't they? Yeah. Healthy mind, healthy body. I mean, we've been hearing that for forever.
Yeah.
But that's the thing though, is that wasn't really pushed. It's been pushed now, but it's because everyone's out of shape, and then it's definitely linked to like depression, mental issues, etc.
Absolutely. Well, I think a shame, and I guess it might be ironic that I'm mentioning this on sort of a social media platform, but I mean, how else we put it out there? I mean, social media will glorify the physical, it will glorify the visible, and that will totally skew things towards fastest, biggest, strongest, that kind of stuff. And even society in general, pre-social media, the best athletes or the best, I don't know, supermodels, whatever, the generally physical things are garnering the most fame and the most money. I always think about, there's some brilliant people in these laboratories trying to find cures for cancer.
Yeah.
Nobody knows about these people.
No one's liking their posts.
They're not making millions of dollars.
Exactly.
And unambiguously, these people are contributing more, to humanity than someone who's throwing a ball in a hoop, right?
The public are looking for them for inspiration and for guidance and wisdom and so forth. But in reality, we probably should get a little bit of balance of both, really.
It's one of those things that's, I mean, it's probably even shorter now, but it used to be 7 seconds to get someone's attention. I feel like it's even shorter now because we've got social media and you just scroll. So it's probably like 4 or 5 seconds now. You can't get across like intellectual concepts in 4 or 5 seconds.
I know when we put a video on Facebook, for example, the measurement for success in terms of views is 3 seconds.
There you go. So you hold someone's attention for 3 seconds and you get a thumbs up.
Was it watched for 3 seconds? Great. Yeah, then it counts as a statistic, towards the success of that video. Crazy, 3 seconds.
Whereas you show some abs or some butt or something, that catches someone's attention and that's it, and then you're good. It's it is hard to sort of push the intellectual side of things versus the physical sometimes, especially on like we are now. I was just having the conversation the other day, actually this morning. No one watches like long things anymore, like the news or or documentaries or anything anymore. It's all Netflix, podcasts, YouTube, Facebook.
Well, the thing with the news, it's already old by the time it comes on at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. at night.
100%.
You've got the notification on your phone at 25, within seconds of it happening.
And keep in mind with the news, because this is definitely coming out, in the last few months, even more so, is that the folks creating the news, they're not dummies. You know what I mean? They know exactly what we're talking about now. That it requires that 3-4 seconds to get attention, and they're profit driven. You know what I mean? So they're going to put that, just like you were talking about, the abs or the butt image is going to get attention. They're going to put the bloody carnage, or they're going to put the image that's going to attract you, and that's typically going to be negative. I mean, we have a cognitive bias to gravitate towards, oh my goodness, that's so horrible, like the train wreck thing. Like you can't not look at a train wreck, even if 99% of what's going on is not a train wreck. You know what I mean? The media is going to put that forward and to attract viewers because, you know, they need the money. And so
why is that? Why is that? I've always been curious about why we're drawn to the macabre. You know, why we're drawn to chaos.
I think it's the evolutionary survival mechanism. I mean, I think, like, for example, the way I've read it is, so take, prehistoric man, or nomadic hunter-gatherer, which is the way we evolved for hundreds of thousands of years. So the vast majority of our DNA was developed through natural selection in this nomadic hunter-gatherer society of less than 150 people. You know what I mean? Which also can segue into why we're not equipped to handle globalism. But say in those societies, say man is walking through the brush and sees a rustling in the brush, 20 feet away. If prehistoric man assumes that might be a lion, that might be something bad, and flees, basically or sneaks away, he survives and passes on his genes. Whereas the prehistoric man who thinks, that might not be a lion, might be right, but also might be wrong, might get eaten and not pass on his genes. You know what I mean? So the genes are getting passed on generally in aggregate by the folks who are more prone to look for something bad and assume something is bad.
So we're looking at these incidents thinking, is there a danger to me personally? And that's not necessarily a fascination. That's just a need for us to put our minds at ease. What I'm saying will not affect me. Whereas, looking over and seeing a wedding, you're not necessarily going to linger on that because you're going to think, it's just a wedding. There's no threat to me. Absolutely.
And I think a secondary factor to that would be it can make us, through schadenfreude, basically, I love that word, but where it's a horrible concept, but it's a wonderful word, where basically we feel better when we see others in a bad situation, like others that are worse off than we are. Jerry Springer, I don't know if you remember Jerry Springer. He had the talk show in the States. I was a little kid when that came out. And I remember even as a kid watching it being like, what the fuck is this? These people are messed up. And I think they over dramatized it too. I mean, it later came out that they were kind of staging some of the fights. But the bottom line is they were presenting people in pretty terrible situations. But everyone loved watching it. And I think a big part of it was you could watch it and be like, well, hey, I'm having a bad day, but at least my day is not like that.
It's probably and then what's making things worse these days is social media is flipping that concept on its head, isn't it? And we're displaying the best moments of our lives, even though they might be fleeting and potentially manufactured. And so therefore people are comparing themselves to others thinking, wow, they're in Greece, they're traveling, their marriage is perfect, their kids are perfect.
100%. People are watching other people's very selective highlights and assuming it's reflective of their totality, which is so false. But it's impossible to not do that. One of my favorite sayings that I really think about in that context is that comparison is the thief of joy. And I think that the second we start trying to compare with other people, which we do, inevitably we're just like when I talked about being biased towards like negativity, I think we're also biased in a similar sense towards, like, you could see 100 internet posts and maybe say right down the middle, 50 of them, say 100 bench press posts, 50 of them are bench pressing less than you, 50 are bench pressing more than you. I think people are going to fixate on the ones that are more, i.e. quote unquote better than the ones that are less. They're going to feel insecure as opposed to secure, even though mathematically there's just as much reason to feel one way or the other. You know what I mean? So I think that, people see those, and then keep in mind that since we're watching highlights, it's going to skew it not so 50-50, but more so it's like 90-10, because they're just going to see the highlights of everybody else, but their own frame of reference is their totality, not just their own highlights. They're going to feel even more insecure.
I think I figured out with because I watch Jackson's lifting on Instagram, and I think I figured out.
You're the only one.
I figured out he's only posting the lifts from about 3 years ago where he could actually achieve that weight, and he just drags them out over several years, even though he's only squatting.
I banked up the videos. Yeah.
Well, bodybuilders.
I'm guilty of that. I mean, especially in the last year with things like being shut down, and I had a few surgeries also. So like my lifts now are way down, but Instagram will keep popping up like memories, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 1 year ago, whatever. And And so I'll put those out there just to, because it's kind of nostalgic, but yeah, I guess I might give a false impression, but.
So let's just talk briefly about your lifting now. So your lifting career started is it 2014? Or sorry, your competitive career anyway. So you quickly escalated. You've just had a equivalent 2200 total, eh? Was it your 2200? I'm trying to get my maths right.
2210.
2210, 1,000 and something. Was it, Jackson?
1,002 and a half.
1,002 and a half. So you've joined I was going to say an almost exclusive club, but it seems that club membership is rapidly increasing.
It absolutely is. Yeah. February of 2014 was my first meet. And the progression for the first, I'd say 2 years was pretty good. I mean, as far as like my lifts progressing, my training progressing, but also the meets that I was doing were getting I feel very fortunate that each one was a little more competitive than the one before that, slightly bigger stage, so,
I'd love to talk to you about that in a minute as well, about the US powerlifting scene as well, because it seems vastly different to the New Zealand and Australian powerlifting scene as well. So you just mentioned before about the jump in weight. So just for the listeners, I think your first meet was in kilos anyway, 697.5, and even within a year, you were hitting the early 900s, 920. So that is an incredible jump.
Yeah, the kilo part throws me off because in my mind I remember about the pounds.
Yeah, exactly. I could put it in. Let me put it in pounds.
Chuck it in pounds, Greg.
Chuck it in pounds. Sorry. Yeah. So a 1,537 pound was your first total, yes. And then you're hitting.
It's a 2,000 pounds.
2028.
Yeah.
2028, and just within a year. That's incredible progress.
Yeah, probably a year and a half. I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say 18 months.
August to be August of 2015 was the first 2,000 plus.
So take us through your powerlifting competitive history and why and how did you achieve such a massive jump in your total?
So competition wise, yeah. So my first meet with the 1537, I was just in my mind think 1540. Was a meet in Vacaville at Old School Iron, awesome gym out here close by, and USPA. So all my first meets were USPA under that federation, which is one of the biggest, and I gotta think the biggest federation in the United States. I mean, it just seems, at least on the West Coast, I don't know, it seems like most meets are USPA, and I like them. Feel like they have they're pretty like good, as far as the rules and strictness and standards. And I like the people. But so I did that meet, USPA, like local meet. Then I did USPA Nationals a few months later. Then I did IPL Worlds, which is still under the USPA IPL Worlds. And then I did USPA LA Fit Expo meet. And then I did the Boss of Bosses 2, which at that one was hosted, or the federation was USPA again for that. So the progression, I think it was, there's a number of factors. And so one is that, getting back to where I've always had just been genetically strong, but it was kind of a unrefined strength. Like basically it was like, there's a big ball of clay, but the clay hadn't been molded, by the sculptor or the potter, into something really. I mean, it was good for like.
Sounds like an Arnold quote there, right? Talking about
Arnold used that exact same quote. Yeah, so I can't take credit for that, but
it's
pumping iron, yeah, slap. You want more shoulders, you slap some clay on the shoulders.
Yeah,
It's true. It's true. Watched that movie many times.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was, so when I mean like molding the clay, it was training like a power lifter. I hadn't done that before. It was learning the technique. It was getting the equipment. Like my first meet, I didn't have a belt. I didn't really have shoe. I had Converse All-Stars, that I'd had for years. At an old wrestling singlet. I didn't, none of that stuff.
Real raw. Let's say that's going
raw. Yeah, very raw. And so it was all that stuff. But two, I guess, other big things. So one was that first meet was shortly after I'd finished the Fire Academy. And Fire Academy is very like metabolically taxing. Like you're just fire turnouts are very, very heavy, very hot. And I already run very hot as is. Like anyone who hangs around me long enough will be like, okay, like if everybody's in jackets, I'm in a short sleeve t-shirt. Like that's the way I always am. So I was just sweating constantly, heart's pumping constantly. And then there's a lot of just manual labor type stuff. You're picking up ladders, pulling charged hose lines. And just so for, 4 or 5 straight months, there's just all that. So I lost a lot of weight.
How many pounds are you carrying as a firefighter, typically in terms of maybe in extreme circumstances, but they make you train in very heavy gear. How heavy are we talking?
So, I mean, the actual gear itself, so the turnout coats and pants and boots and all that stuff, I mean, that's maybe 20, 30 pounds. But then you throw on an air pack, also known as an SCBA. And the helmet's actually a little, it's not weight-wise that heavy, but it like a lot of people get strained necks basically just from the helmet jostling around. Usually I have a light hooked onto my helmet and certain equipment around it. So then that probably adds another maybe 20-ish pounds. But then when you grab like tools off of an engine, or the really heavy stuff is when you have a hose line that has water flowing through it. I think a lot of people don't realize how heavy like water is, especially when it's flowing, through a large diameter hose. And so like one drill you do in the fire academy sometimes is your hose diameters. And so like typically like the fire engines we have, there's 1 3/4, 2.5 inch, 5 inch. Those are our hose lines. Now 5 inch is huge. Like
that's a big hose. Yeah.
So that is that's what you hook directly into a fire hydrant. It hooks back into the fire engine. It just channels the water. So no human is actually going to be like walking around with a 5 inch hose, but the 1 3/4, the 2.5 inch, they are. And obviously 2.5 inch is going to hold a decent amount more water than 1 3/4. And so sometimes the training we would do is they would fully charge a 2.5 inch hose line and basically just make you pick it up and just try and it's called advancing the 2.5 inch and walk forward with that hose line. And it sounds very simple, but it's actually very difficult.
Well, I was trying to do the maths in my head. I mean, we're talking where a liter of water would be what, 2.5 pounds? A liter of water?
Like a gallon's like 8 pounds.
Yeah. So you've got how many gallons you got in total in this hose?
A ton.
Powerlifters, Greg, come on, mate.
And I'm trying to do the math, but it must be 100 pounds of weight, give or take, 80 pounds.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. And it's kind of in an awkward shape too. Like, when the gallon has a handle on it, that's nice, but this is just a long hose line that's, twisting and turning. So
you'd be doing this by yourself, Andrew, wouldn't you? Just be managing.
Right. Well, ideally with a little help, but
yeah. Oh, we'll leave him to it. Yeah, powerlifter.
But so after months and months of that, my strength was down, because I still went to the gym on the weekends, but I was just trying to maintain some base level strength. So I did have a bit of what you call newbie gains after I finished the academy because I was putting weight back on. So that kind of helped, I'd say, for several months as far as just getting stronger. I was kind of like
just regaining lost ground sort of thing. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And
what are you eating? What's your nutrition like when you're in the fire service? I can't imagine you can just stop and take a break and open up your Tupperware and eat your chicken and rice.
I'm not as strict as some people that are all just like the chicken, rice, broccoli type stuff. One of my big mentors is Stan Efferding, you know what I mean? So he's big on, steak, beef, things like bison. And so I like to get, what was that?
He's the one with the vertical diet.
He does the vertical diet. Yeah. And I follow a lot of his principles. I like milk a lot, like whole milk, thankfully I tolerate dairy and I feel like
you tolerate milk?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great source of protein.
Lucky man.
Vitamin D, calcium, all kinds of good stuff. It's cheap. Like I like milk. And then, Greek yogurt, I use, whey protein powder, animal whey. I enjoy that a lot. Mixing it with things whether with milk or with yogurt or in oatmeal. So yeah, it's pretty basic. I don't count macros. I don't count calories. I kind of let my hunger be a guide. It's only when I'm maybe within several weeks of a competition that I'm really super calculating about it because I need to make weight, but outside of that, I'm just, if I perform okay and
eat when you're hungry, eh? Yep.
Yeah, pretty much. I'll always keep in mind how long it's been, like, because occasionally I say it's been maybe a few hours and it's like, I'm not hungry, but I haven't eaten. I should probably get something in, but usually I feel like my instinct is decent for that.
So that first like 3 competitions, when you first came into it, you sort of seem to have maintained under 100 weigh-in weight. Had you so you came out of fire training at say 100 kilos to 220 pounds.
Yeah.
And then for those, as you then trained and put on 330 pounds on your total, were you then cutting to make that the under 220 still?
Absolutely. Yeah. Each meet I gained lean mass.
Yeah.
So it was, because coming out of fire, I was probably actually about, in pounds, sorry. Which is,
right.
under 100 kilos.
Yeah.
And there's like a couple months where I put on maybe a little over 5 pounds. And so for that very first meet that I did, my natural weight was maybe 222 or something like that. I remember I knew I was close. So I didn't do the 24-hour weigh-ins. I just came the morning of the meet. Like I skipped breakfast. I made 220 or 219 or whatever, and then competed. But that was the first meet and last meet where I didn't cut any weight. And except for one meet, I did 275, and that's kind of different circumstances where I was only squatting and I had just come off an injury. But really, every meet that I've really truly competed in full power has been a weight cut, except for the first one. So then after that, I think for the next meet, I was probably up to like 230, and then I cut down to 220. And then the next one, I was like more close to like 240, and I cut down to 220. And so then for my fourth meet, the LA Fit Expos, that's when I bumped up to 110 kilos. And at that time I was probably like 245. And then it was it was maybe 8 months until Boss of Bosses 2, where I did 242 again. And at that, I was probably up to maybe 255 at that point. So it was the rebound after the Fire Academy. It was just being new to powerlifting training and technique and all that stuff. Another big thing was, I talk about my athletic background. I'd always been involved in sports, and especially like wrestling, grappling, and those are very cardiovascularly intensive sports. And I was actually still doing some wrestling as I was getting into powerlifting. And, and I think that was kind of keeping my gains back somewhat. But I was enjoying doing that. And when I basically came to the realization that, like, if I want to really do the best I can in powerlifting, I have to set aside these other activities. I did that. And so that was the first time really in my life I wasn't doing lots of cardio or metabolically taxing things, week after week after week. So that also definitely, once I stopped doing that created another big rebound.
Well, your recovery goes through the roof. I mean, your training volume would have dropped, and so you all of a sudden can squat and deadlift and bench and do all the accessories without having to stress.
Yeah. So all those things put together really.
It's a rare person that can master more than one sport. At a time.
Absolutely.
There was I don't know if you guys know him, but there's a guy, Alex Viada. He does the hybrid training stuff, and I think he ran a marathon or an ultra marathon even, and then pulled 700 pounds in the same week.
So I know Alex. I mean, we go way back. We actually went to college together.
Oh, wow.
True.
Yeah.
Cool.
So he was actually one of the first, I guess, sort of powerlifting people that I knew in the gym, the university gym. And I think and so I learned a few things from him there. And then I've seen him at meets a couple times. He's come to some of the meets I was at. So yeah.
His philosophy on the is it called the hybrid training style? Does it hold merit in terms of your average public, or do you need some genetics going on there?
Well, I think it's more of an example of, the saying I'm going to say is a little extreme, but if you're in the woods hunting and you chase 2 rabbits, you miss them both. You know what I mean? And it's like, obviously, if he's doing a decent marathon time and pulling 700 or whatever, that's not missing the rabbits. I mean, that's still, decent stuff. But I think the question is, okay, well, the same with CrossFit. You know what I mean? Like that's just what he's talking about is the same philosophy as CrossFit, is the same philosophy as a lot of people on social media that are basically doing a multitude of physical activities and, putting it out there for whatever reason, promoting themselves, promoting a product or whatever. And I have nothing against that. I think, it's fine. I've done CrossFit myself and all that, but it's the jack of all trades, master of none type thing. It's like, yeah, you can, depending on your genetics and other factors, like, yeah, you can maybe be at, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, like a 7 or an 8 at a few activities. But if you're trying to get into 9 or 10, it's just the odds are not in your favor if you're really, really trying to go to be the best at something.
Especially in that aspect, you've really got to manage things. You've got to be on top of your nutrition, all the training volumes, the programming, and most people just aren't disciplined enough to make it work.
Right. Or just life doesn't allow that. I mean, most people
of course
have to work a job. A lot of people have families and other factors in play where they just simply can't,
We had a guest on, Kate Mitchell. She's a New Zealand woman and IFBB pro physique, and also a brilliant powerlifter, and also strongman as well. Strong woman. So I know she does struggle to maintain excellence in all three. But she's an excellent bodybuilder. She's also an excellent powerlifter. So she's achieved it, but it's her whole life. Her whole life is consumed. And she's never doing one at the same time as the other. So the off season for bodybuilding, a bit of powerlifting and so forth.
Absolutely.
I know she's definitely not maintained all three at once.
Well, and I think that touches on a very important point here and I think Mike Israetel might have posted about I knew I was reading about it recently. I mean, it makes common sense, but when you're talking about pursuing multiple activities, a very important factor is how similar those activities are as far as the physical capacities. So it'll be much easier to excel in powerlifting, strongman, bodybuilding than powerlifting and marathons. Marathon running, cricket. I mean, like very disparate activities that tax very different physical capacities. You know what I mean? So that's why there are bodybuilder powerlifters for sure, but there are not a whole lot of powerlifter tennis players. I mean, they're not a lot of bodybuilder gymnasts. Like these are you won't see too many strongman ultra marathon runners. Like completely different physical capacities is going to exponentially make it harder to excel in both.
I know some of the boys at work want me to play golf, but I don't know if I can literally bring my arms together close enough to hold the club. I don't know about you, Jackson. You the same?
Dude, we go to the driving range sometimes, and like within 10 swings, I've got chest cramp. Like I've got to swap sides to get the same amount of reps.
Yep, no, I hear you. I know, Andrew, you've talked about the sweet trifecta, the Venn diagram of following your passion. So, am I good at it? Do I love it? And can I make money from it? I know you've definitely followed that, yeah. So, how does the third one come into play with powerlifting? Can I make money out of it?
Oh, I mean, in summary, no, it doesn't work. I mean, I tell people this too, like anyone who, and I've had this conversation with like very high level powerlifters. I think anyone who comes to the sport thinking like, oh, this is where I'm going to make my living. I mean, they got another thing coming. Like, it's just, I mean, and even in general, I just think that's a bad idea. Even if someone's pursuing a sport that can be potentially lucrative, you know what I mean? I think if I'm talking to someone who's say 16 years old, passionate about basketball, very talented at basketball, I'd still tell them like, okay, still stay in school, like, don't get in trouble, do other things, because like this is all statistics. I mean, just the odds of any one person reaching such a high level of excellence in any endeavor to the extent that they make a lot of income is very, very low, and I mean, I think so many quote unquote influencers love to use, well, chase your dreams, blah, 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 and it's like, okay. I mean, but I think that sometimes steers people in the wrong direction, or like, well, what are those dreams? You know what I mean? Because not all dreams are equal, and what is your, potential, capacity to reach said dreams? You know what I mean? If my dream is to go colonize Saturn, well, that's a horrible dream because it's not going to happen, like, whereas if my dream is to,
never say never, Andrew, never say never.
Yeah, my dream is to put 10 pounds on a bench press, well, that's a better dream, like, so I don't know. I think the world of sports is filled with really, really dumb cliches that I just could do without.
It's challenging as a parent. I've got 2 boys, and it's challenging as a parent. You don't want to say nothing is impossible. At the same time, you want to keep them grounded and have a plan B, C, and D in the event that their YouTube, aspirations don't come they don't quite meet them just yet. But at the same time, I don't want to say it's impossible, because it is possible to achieve essentially most things. But at the same time, keep them grounded. Yet you're still in school, get university, get a degree, get something behind you. Sure, pursue whatever you want to pursue, but have a few options, because life can throw you a curveball anywhere at any one point in time.
Well, I think a lot of it is how it's framed, and you can even just subtly change the wording and things to make it a lot more truthful. In other words, one of the sayings that I absolutely hate is you can do anything if you put your mind to it. That is, anyone with half a brain knows that's complete bullshit. But you could say you improve your chances of doing anything if you put your mind to it, right? And that is unambiguously true. And so I think, working hard is a good thing. Trying hard is a good thing. And I think most people just through experience in life will pick up on that, either subconsciously or consciously. It's just keeping people from the delusion that, anything is possible, or and also I think evaluating one's dreams to, like, say someone with has several kids and other responsibilities, you hear stories about people kind of like abandoning all that to pursue the dream of being, say, the best athlete in some endeavor. And I don't really see nobility in that. I mean, I see selfishness in that. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, great, you're quote unquote chasing your dreams, but you're also like not providing for lives you created and people, and you're probably not providing a service to your community either, like in pursuing basically an ego driven pursuit. It just I don't know.
Like for you, what did you study in college?
So I got my degree. So I started out as an engineering major, but within a year and a half, and it was an experiment to begin with. I didn't go in thinking, oh yeah, I'm into engineering. It was just like, I did decently math and science, or I was better at math and science in high school, and engineering jobs were super hot, especially in the Bay Area. So I thought, well, I'm gonna try this out. Wasn't really my thing. So I ended up getting my degree in public policy studies, and I got a minor in political science, close to getting a minor in economics as well. I was one class away from that. So that was kind of my framework.
Yeah, and then you were still wrestling and etc. So, but you weren't like, I'm going to be the best at wrestling, I'm going to fall back on this. But now you've ended up in the firefighter, EMT, area. The wrestling thing, it was, in my mind, I wanted to be, the best wrestler I could be, within reason. Like I wasn't, wasn't cutting class or dropping out of school to just wrestle. And I wasn't, putting all the eggs in that one basket. But within reason, I was trying as hard as I could to be as good as I could be. Just like, I got pretty good grades, but I wasn't trying to be the valedictorian of the school either. You know what I mean? Like, I was doing all the assignments and working hard in that respect. I mean, what I got my degree in were things that interested me. I was interested in the political arena, all the factors that go into policy decisions, whether it's local, state, federal, international level. Economics, the way the money system works, the banking systems work, and all that. So those, but with those majors, I
Yeah, it was what I was interested in, as opposed to what I thought, okay, I want to pursue a career in this stuff. And in a sense, that could have been a mistake on my part. There have been times when I've looked back and thought, well, I wish I'd been more career focused, in school. But
I think everybody has that point in their lives where they think back and what if I'd made some different choices?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I have that every day.
That's a rabbit hole, isn't it? That one.
Yeah, but at the same time, also, I think, and even at the time, I remember reading plenty of research that shows that like a very high percentage of people, their careers don't have anything to do with what they majored in college. You know what I mean? And that's where I think unfortunately nowadays we've moved away from it, but ideally an academic setting is teaching the basics of logic, critical thinking, analytical thinking, introspection, various perspectives, things like that create they basically strengthen your brain. It's like basically like a basic foundation of strength from which one could develop into a power lifter or a strongman or Olympic lifter, but just in the intellectual sense.
The obviously, so you then went up to Boss of Bosses 3 in 2016. I think I sort of found you on Instagram around about then.
Okay.
And that was 950, but that was when that was obviously people are doing totals like that like relatively often now, but back then that was up there, wasn't it? Did you?
Yeah, that was the world record. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the world record at the time, wasn't it, for the 110s, the 242s?
Yeah, I mean that was probably my favorite meet. I mean that was just an awesome meet. I mean that's when I went against Larry Wheels.
Yeah.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, so he and we both broke the same record. And
how does that work on the day when you both broken the record? Is it like the lightest body weight takes it, or?
Oh no. So I mean, I guess I was not being clear there. So so I'll set the stage. So basically, in 110 kilograms, the total world record raw with sleeves was held by Dan Green. I train at Dan's gym. I train with Dan. Dan's a good friend of mine. He had that for several years. Okay, so that's where that's at. Several months before Boss of Bosses 3, John Rivas broke Dan Green's total record by like 4 pounds, or 2.5 kilos. Then at Boss of Bosses 3, Larry Williams on his second deadlift breaks John Rivas's total record by, a small margin. I don't want to say like 3 pounds. I mean, somewhere there might have been some chipping going on there, but like I think Rivas had 2087, Larry got 2090. Then I hit my second deadlift, which beat Larry's record that he had for a few minutes with 2094. Then Larry tries his third deadlift, misses it. So then I knew I had it. I tried my third deadlift and I missed that. And so it ended up with, the record there. But brilliant. I mean, that was a cool meet. I loved the lead up to that meet because that's where Larry and I started following each other on Instagram. And it was a good rivalry because.
But a banter going back and forward?
Not a lot of banter. It was more like I'm watching his training, he watched my training, and our squats were kind of even keel. I think we both squatted almost the same weight there. My deadlift was above his at the time. His bench was way above mine at the time. And I squatted a tiny bit more than he did it. But it fueled me to perform better, seeing this guy. And I remember even telling my training partners, I was like, I think this guy's going to be the next big thing. And I was right. But also, and then I think, and he and I talked about it afterwards. Like, him and I have always gotten along really well. And I like that. I like a respectful rivalry as opposed to just, trash talking type stuff. Like that just seems immature to me. So I've always respected the dynamic I have with him. But it was also, the meet was great too, not only for that, but like Yuri Belkin. It was the first time I'd seen Yuri Belkin compete in the States. He won 220.
He did something ridiculous at 220 that meet as well.
Absolutely ridiculous. Well, it was him against Kevin Oak and against Dan Green, all at 220.
Wow.
And all three, are doing crazy stuff. I think both Kevin and Yuri broke the world record in that meet.
Yeah.
And I even remember also that meet at that time, Ed Cohn still had the deadlift record at 220, that's probably at the time the most hallowed record anywhere. It was the 901 at 220 that stood for many, many, many years. And Yuri tried for it there, tried to pull 903, didn't get it in that meet, but I remember that vividly. So yeah, it was a good time.
Would you say that was sort of like your planting of the flag as such, as one of the powerlifters of the time?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I mean, to answer your question, like not really. I mean, in my life, and definitely in powerlifting, there hasn't been a moment where, like, looking back, I would say yes, but at the time, it might sound crazy, it didn't feel that special to me. You know what I mean? Like it was just kind of like, my mind's always been like, once one thing is done, I'm thinking about the next thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's not a whole lot of just like savoring the moment or reveling in it. Like,
and how soon are you thinking that? You thinking it on the day itself?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that night, I felt good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I felt good about it, but it was just kind of like, I mean, I missed my third deadlift at that meet. You know what I mean? And that would have,
that's what you were pissed
really,
about.
Yeah, that really would have locked in. And it was a deadlift I had hit in training. It was 865. I'd hit it in training. My hands tore apart on my second deadlift, and so that led to missing the third deadlift. And so I was bummed about. Honestly, I was bummed about that. And so I kind of, in retrospect, wished I had kind of just taken the whole thing in and been like, "Hey, Andrew, that's you broke world record. That's good." Like,
yeah, you did all right.
Yeah.
Have you achieved that in training, Andrew? The 865?
Yeah. So just before that meet, I had hit, and that's still to this day my highest gym deadlift. It was 865. So I hit that, and in my mind, that's going to be my third. That's going to be my third. After that, in the gym, I've hit 854 a few times. I've hit 860. I tried 860 for a double, didn't get the second one. I actually, before the Kern in 2017, which is when I got hurt, I had 881 just at lockout, and then missed, and then the grip slipped. So I haven't counted that. Some people have said, well, you essentially pulled 881. But
you don't count it in your head though.
No,
yeah. I've had some deadlifts like that, and people are like, "Oh, you've done that." And I'm like, "No, I didn't." You always hold it against yourself. But so like you say, you're on this. Obviously, you've been going up and up and up for 2 years. So I can see why you were sort of like, "Okay, well, what's next? I've done this. What's next?" Because
that's a good point.
You're in that progress mindset.
Yes.
You're in that, right, stuff it. I'm not staying still. I've progressed. What did you put on your total? Like, I know for our viewers, it's 250 kilos. So it's like, 550 pounds on your total in 2 years.
That's crazy.
So you're on this progress, this huge thing up. And then your next meet, I think this is the US Open. And that was where you ruptured your tricep benching.
Yeah.
So
that's one
take us through that.
Yeah, so that meet, in the build-up to that meet, that was going to be, me against Larry again. And there's actually a few postings of, Larry and I facing off coming into that meet. But also Kevin, was going up to 242 for that meet. So it was like the three of us. Obviously that meet was a huge, huge turning point for me, where I had been having pretty substantial pain in my left tricep for 2 years before that point. And that's actually why my competitions became less frequent, where I just, from LA Fit Expo, only did Boss of Bosses 2, didn't compete for another year until Boss of Bosses 3, and then didn't compete again until April 2017, because every prep, my left tricep, and I had an MRI, and I knew the tendon was falling apart. And I had tried to rest it. I had gotten PRP injections. I'd done whatever the doctor said is the best I could do, aside from just giving up lifting. And it would always start to just get really, really bad. And so, I mean, I had hit a 501 bench at Boss of Bosses 2, and a 500-pound bench press has been like a childhood goal of mine, but probably the first strength goal I ever had. I felt decent about that, but always wanted more. And so going to that meet, and even building up to it, in my mind, I mean, every heavy set on bench press, I thought this might be where my arm goes, which is a total mind fuck, but it is what it is. It was like, I mean, I don't know what else I can do, and it just so happened on my third bench press in that meet. And it, when people talk about ruptures, there's a spectrum of ruptures. A lot of ruptures are just very kind of clean. This was dirty. This was a dirty rupture. I mean, because it pulled the bone off of my elbow.
It's an avulsion.
Stayed on the tendon. It lodged midway up my arm, and as it did that, and the tendon itself frayed apart like a rope, and then it shredded a lot of the muscle tissue. So if you palpate my tricep now, it's still mostly reconstructed, and there's a lot of calcified lumps along where the tendon was reconstructed and stuff like that.
Any pain?
Not really anymore. I mean, it took maybe a year and a half before I stopped really feeling much in the way of pain there. There's just I mean, the nerves are still, I mean, I think I'll probably never have full function back in that arm. When I go heavy enough on bench press, right shy of lockout, that's where, I mean, already I can't straighten it quite as much as my right arm. I mean, we're talking about 1 or 2 degrees, not a super big deal, but also there is weakness at that final end range.
And it's true weakness, isn't it? It isn't a fear.
No, it's true weakness, 100%. Yeah. Because I've even done plenty of stuff where I put pins there and just end range lockouts or holds and things like that, and it's very clear that it's just an imbalance. And I've done acupuncture, electroacupuncture, electrostimulation, deep tissue massage. I mean, just all kinds of stuff, trying to just get things back online with that area of the muscle, the lower tricep on the left side.
Anything experimental? What are people doing these days? Stem cells, all that? No business?
So that one, stem cells is something I have not done, but I have absolutely, it's on my radar. Nick Best, he's a friend of mine. I got a ton of respect for him. The guy's a legend, and he recently had a bunch of stem cell treatment done, and I think Ed Cohn's had some stem cell stuff too, and
Dave Palumbo too, I think.
I want to try that. I mean, it's expensive, and it's I think to get the real deal, you got to travel to like Panama or Colombia.
Yeah, it's all down South America, definitely.
Yeah, so it's a bit of an undertaking, but that's the one thing that comes to mind for me as far as like
I remember on Joe Rogan's podcast, he said he's had it done on his shoulders, and it was like brand new.
Really?
It was ludicrous. He went down, he's had it done a couple of times, he said, and it was just, it's like his shoulders brand new, and his shoulders are fucked from fighting. And he said it was just phenomenal, better than any. So that like it feels, but then obviously, like you say, it's expensive. It's restricted to people who can then travel and afford it.
Yeah.
But sorry, you go.
Oh no, I was just agreeing with you. Yeah.
But so after that, obviously that's sort of the first big injury. Most people, they would probably consider that career ending almost. So what's the, obviously you're on this meteoric rise. What was the mental state? What are you already planning to come back, or are you thinking, is this it?
So I think, as soon as it went, I never in my mind was thinking I'm done. There's always still that the progress mindset. And I mean, I just like, it's I don't know, strength, physical exertion, being strong, trying to get stronger is just a part of my identity. You know what I mean? I tell people I'm not going to stop until I'm either in the grave or in the urn. I'm decided on burial cremation, but it's I mean, that's part of me. That's in the essence of my being. I won't stop.
It's an interesting question that one, because I've been asked the same thing. Jackson, I don't know if you've ever been asked that as well. Like, are you ever going to stop?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Not until I'm forced to stop. Yeah.
I'll probably lift. I'll be lifting on the day that I die, probably.
Yeah.
If I go to
the gym,
Yeah. It just it literally just does, like you say, it becomes part of who you are almost.
Absolutely.
Part of your identity. So obviously you were mature, and I mean, how old were you then? 30, 34, 35.
I think 35. Yeah, when it ruptured.
So you've got that base of maturity behind you. You know, you've been doing competitive sports for 30 years almost. You know, like
yeah.
So you already had it pretty, because you see a lot of people these days, and they'll be a flash in the pan, and they lift for 2 years, and they get an injury, and that's it. They're done.
Yeah.
Because they haven't got that built up sort of, I can make it through this. So obviously you did that. What was the rehab, etc. like? What was the?
So I was fortunate to have a good orthopedic surgeon that I'd already seen for other stuff, and he's actually the same one who already told me that the tricep was separating and all that, and done other treatments. So he operated on it pretty fast. Like it was pretty, you know, he said that I need to operate very fast before it retracts even further. So he moved his schedule around to accommodate and get me in. And then starting there, it was 6 months, no pressing, no overhead, no, I mean, not even a bar,
Nothing
like that. Yeah. And so after about, I think maybe 2 months, I started physical therapy. And that's where, I mean, we're talking about 2.5 pound tricep kickbacks, you know, just incredibly light stuff.
Lots of reps.
Yeah.
And you followed that to the letter? Or you're like, nah, stuff that 2.5 pounds. I can do 5 pounds next week.
Let's make it back. I think well, so the first several weeks was actually at a PT place with a PT person, so I couldn't really like just fake grab the wrong, you know what I mean? It was, you know, and I think my perspective was grounded enough that I was like, you know, I want to follow every advice I'm given to a T. That's good. Maximize my chances of getting this better. Now at the same time, I trained everything else. So like within, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks or less than 2 weeks, I think after surgery, I was in the gym, but I'd use machines and just press, you know, do all the stuff with my right arm, all the leg machines and stuff like that. Yeah, obviously I couldn't, you know, squat, you know, with my arm out, you know, and definitely, you know, most of the normal body or barbell lower body movements couldn't do those, but I made do with machines and whatnot.
So every day was leg day, yeah?
Just about leg day or right side day.
Total 360.
Yeah. and then pretty soon thereafter, I was able to start doing like safety bar or like front squat things, basically where there's no, like I couldn't back squat still because the doctor didn't want me to, because it would, you know, there's still that pressure on the elbow. But I was able to, you know, make some decent progress with those movements, to the extent where, and so that's earlier I talked about the one meet I did at 275, which was squat only, and that's where Boss of Bosses 4 was coming up, and you know, and at Boss Barbell Club where I trained with, you know, so Dan and Sparkle Green, you know, they knew I wanted to be part of the meet and stuff like that, but they knew I obviously couldn't bench press and couldn't deadlift either, but they were like, well, you want to do squat only? And I was like, I don't know if that's even a thing, but they're like, yeah, you can do squat only. And I was like, okay, I'll do squat only. And I didn't cut weight. So I just weighed in at my normal. I was like 255 or something, and just squatted, you know, I mean, I just wanted to do something, and they let me do that. So that was cool. But you know, that kind of segues into being unable to bench. And then obviously in my mind, you know, just physically knowing I'm probably diminished in the bench press, you know, maybe indefinitely, I made a lot of squat progress, you know what I mean? And so like, it was after that where I started to get like world records in the squat, you know what I mean? That's, I guess, kind of like what they say, making life handing you lemons and making lemonade, something like that. Like, you know, so.
I was gonna say, so then you obviously big progress in the squat. Like I think I've seen 400, so an 881 triple in training.
Yeah.
Would that be your biggest triple?
I think so. Yeah. So, and I think I went for 4 on that, and I think I failed on the 4th. I think I tried a triple with 903 and failed on the 3rd there.
Right.
I did a double with 925. So that's definitely my best double.
Right.
But yeah.
That's ludicrous. That's
so what? Yeah, that's insane. So obviously you made that big squat progress.
Massive squat progress. Yeah. I mean, I'm saying the biggest we've done is the 942.
So that was
in reps. Yeah.
Yeah, this is all in wraps. Yeah, so kind of the trajectory was that meet, the Kern in 2017, where I got hurt, that was my first wrapped meet. So I'd only done sleeves up until then. And so in that meet, I hit 400 kilos on my third squat.
At 81. Was that the first time you touched that? Hadn't hit that in training?
Man, good question. I might have hit it once in training before the meet. I'm typically been one of those people where my third attempt will not be too far off if things are going well to my best gym lift in lead up. Like I can't magically pull out like, oh, somehow I've added 10 kilograms of strength, like, no, if it's there, it's there. And, maybe 2.5, maybe 5 kilos more on a very, all the planets are aligning. But
do you do your own attempt selection, Andrew, at your meets, or you've got someone in your corner?
I do. Yeah. I know. I always go into it with an idea of, obviously I know my openers and I have an idea of the jumps I want, an idea of what an ideal third would be. My first few meets, I didn't even think about records or any of that stuff. It was just going off of my training. It was, the latter meets where I did also start to factor in the external stuff of like, okay, well, what am I trying to beat, or other people's performances and stuff. So
always going for the win, and the record, if it happens, is a nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, or going for a PR in I think my mentality, if I do my best, if I PR, then it's gonna win and it's gonna set records. That's kind of my mentality.
You did at that US Open, when you came back, obviously you squatted 413, so that's like 910
110
yeah
or so. That was the record at the time?
Yes. Yeah, so that's my favorite competition lift ever. I had 2 lifts that I'd say are my favorites, and that's, I'd say, the number one favorite. So I was at the Kern 2018. So I was like my comeback meet after I got hurt literally a year prior at the Kern 2017. So it had a lot of symbolic meaning. I was coming back to the same meet that had put me down. And, and yeah, at the time I chipped the world record on that squat. And I tried it on my second attempt and actually failed it. So
yeah,
got it on the third. So I'd hit more in training. So this is another kind of, when we talked back to, I was upset about missing my third deadlift at the Bosses 3. It was the same. I was like initially bummed about, well, I wanted to do more. I didn't want to just chip the record. I wanted to clearly
smash it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't, but it's like you got to kind of take what you can get, I don't know. I think I came around a little faster to being like, okay, this is okay. This is okay. But yeah, no, that was great. And I felt very good about the depth on that one. And everyone seemed to be good on that. Because that meet was notoriously strict on the judging too. Like
I remember that. There was no questions on anything from that.
Yeah, even some would look like pretty darn good squats getting red lighted and like, ooh. So that was a fun meet.
You can't win as a ref, eh?
No, there's always someone that'll tell you that you're wrong.
Yeah.
Whether you've given it or not given it, you're always gonna.
Oh yeah, too strict or too loose. Yeah. It's probably there's that fine line, there's that magic spot, which is really hard to achieve. And
it's a thankless job. It was after that meet. So actually the 2019 Kern, I was a judge, and to qualify for that, I judged at another meet out in Reno. And so I've worked those 2 meets and so judged a lot of lifts, and that really, taught me. I had an idea going into it, but it's difficult, especially on squats. Where you're down on your knees, you're just staring at a hip crease, but you're also trying to stare at the knee, but there's a knee sleeve on and there's a singlet on.
You got a spotter in the way, and they're all different body weights and body sizes, and
exactly. And it's
where the hell's the crease? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's freaking hard, man. And
where's the top of the knee, because they've got buddy knee wraps on, and 2.5 meters of knee wraps on. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, and then they might have a big quad that goes up or a small. there's so many factors, and it's all going in the blink of an eye. That
some people literally just drop, don't they? They drop and just shoot up, and it's all done and dusted in half a second. That's like,
exactly.
Shit, what did I just see? Did I just see that?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, at the higher level of competition you get in general, the lifters, I mean, you don't get party favors for going below depth, right? You know what I mean? So like, I think the best lifters are going to really go as far as they have to, but no further. And so that's where it's like, I remember like, some lifter, like not as big level meets, you'll see some people that just, ass to grass, and you're like, well, that's easy, white light. And some people where it's clearly too high, and you're like, well, that's easy, red light. But in the thing with the best lifters, it's generally in that right on borderline range, and that makes it hard.
That's interesting. I mean, how much weight is lost from that lift by going too deep? What's the potential?
Ooh. So I think that definitely depends on the lifter, but also I think there's a misconception when it comes to that. I think some people have the misconception that everyone can go ass to grass. It's just some people are too lazy to do that or something like that. And anatomically, no, like some people you'll put 50% of their 1 rep max on their back. So enough weight that it can push them down just through gravity as low as they will go, but light enough weight that unambiguously they could do it for 10 reps. We're not maxing out their strength capacity. And they will not be able to go ass to grass, just whether it's their femur length, their hip mobility, their knee, quad flexibility, their ankle, dorsiflexion mobility, all these factors, their thoracic mobility. I mean, plenty of factors.
And the amount of meat they might have on their legs and glutes and so forth, when they're down at the bottom of that lift. Yeah,
absolutely. So I think, not everyone is even capable of hitting, just that ass to grass depth. And some people are, some people aren't. And so then it's hard to say, like, so some people just will never know, okay, how much less would I squat if I went all the way down? You know what I mean? It's just not even there's no ability to even determine that. So it's hard to say. I think it can depend on how someone trains. I mean, if someone's able to really get rebound off the bottom, I mean, say if their hamstrings literally are hitting their calves or gastrocnemius and creating some kind of a rebound effect, there wouldn't be as much of a detriment. I mean, someone who has a more dynamic squat with a fast descent, fast up, they'll logically not lose as much as someone who goes really, 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 really slow and kind of sits into it, pauses, comes up. Well, then you've increased the range of motion without any rebound, and yes, you will lose weight for sure on the squat.
So obviously after those ones, then you did a couple of sleeve meets. What was the intention there?
Well, so I've always wanted to be, mostly like a raw with sleeves lifter. I mean, I enjoy that the most. It's the rawest possible version. And so even when I got into wraps, I was like, well, I still also want to do sleeves, and so it's just, I like them both. And I want to chase records in both. So that's kind of where that was at. And I mean, so I'd had the world record in wrap squats, and at the times I had hit the world record in sleeves for squats. So I wanted to go for that. And I on my third attempt on both sleeve meets I had done most recently, I tried for the record and didn't get it, but yeah.
That was also your first SPF meet as well.
Yeah. So I started doing Reebok record breakers, slingshot Reebok record breakers up at CSA Gym, which is also in the Bay Area, just up north and to the east.
This is Mark's event, isn't it?
So Mark contributes to it, and then Jesse Burdick. Jesse Burdick has the CSA Gym that hosts it, and Jesse and Mark were super tight, and so I had already gone to that meet as a spectator a few times. Like I was there in November 2015, or sorry, 2016, when Larry established the 242 total record. This was a few months after he and I had competed against each other, and then he broke it and really smashed it. You know what I mean? And he held that for a few years until Kevin broke it. So I'd been there already as a spectator, and just always wanted to do that meet. And finally I got around to doing it. And Yeah, and so I did sleeves in 2018 and then wraps in 2019 at that meet.
And that's the obviously 1,002.5 kilo total. The 22:10.
Yeah, and that was my last meet of
2019. Yeah, so nothing in 2020, Andrew. I know you've had some.
Well, 2020. You'll
2020
be shocked
was a
to
shit
hear
year
this.
anyway, yeah.
Yeah, 2020 just absolutely was a total bummer. In a lot of ways, yeah. And so for me, yeah, I had done that meet in November of 2019, and I already knew that I was going to need to get a couple of surgeries on, and so I knew that was on the horizon. I wanted to get a last competition in. I wanted to do the Arnold, which is, so I'm with Animal. Animal Cage is like one of the funnest things in every year for me. I look forward to it so much. And
looks cool.
It's awesome. Yeah. And so I had an event planned for first weekend in March at the Arnold Animal Cage. And then 2 weeks later, I was going to do a meet, interestingly enough, at the same place that I did my very first meet at. The Pacific Coast Open at Old School Iron in Vacaville, California. It would have been exactly 6 years from the first meet. So it was kind of like I was hoping to make this come full circle, like all that stuff.
Like, who the fuck's this guy walking through the door? Last time he was here, he totaled, like 600 pounds less.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to it, and I was going to do sleeves in that meet, and and then literally, I was at work, and so my shift goes till 3 a.m. at work. If I remember, my boss was going to let me get a couple hours off, get off at like midnight or 1, go home, get a few hours of sleep, and then fly out early that morning to Columbus, Ohio for the Arnold. And I find out like that evening, Andrew, don't come to Columbus. It's shut down.
That's it.
I've been prepping for that and the meet, and that was just a real kick in the nuts.
The event you were going to do for the Animal Cage was it 700 pounds for reps?
No. So my
first
cage. So the first cage I did 700 wrapped squats for reps.
That's right.
Then the next year I came in and I did a back-to-back 700-pound sleeve squats for reps, right into 700-pound deadlifts for reps.
Wow.
And then, but this year,
yuck, that's disgusting.
I know. Yeah.
I wanted to do one of those like total in under a minute type things.
Nice.
The goal was to total 2020 in under a minute, because the year was 2020.
Nice.
So maybe I might have jinxed the whole thing. Maybe planning that.
That's it.
I knew there was somebody.
So you caused COVID. That's what you're saying.
I absolutely did. Yeah,
God damn it.
Yeah.
Patient zero.
I know. And I don't even have a cough. But so that was the plan. I was going to do a 2020 in under a minute. So Rob Hall, one of my Animal teammates, had done 2000 in under a minute, and he did in like 33 seconds or something insane. And so, but that's like the reigning top there. And I was hoping to do 2020 for the year, but also for the, be the highest total under a minute thing. So
would you ever do I think one of the most ridiculous events I've seen in the Animal Cage was when it was Rob the Savage and
Steve Johnson.
And Steve Johnson. They did that 600-pound deadlift off.
Yeah.
You go, I go, you go, I go. And they ended up doing it was some ridiculous amount of 60 reps each.
Over that, yeah. So I believe that, so here's the funny thing. So I remember that very vividly because, so when in the Animal Cage, they have a schedule for all the athletes, and so you got your kind of hour block. And so my hour block was Sunday, so it was the third day of the Arnold, and I think it was maybe 1 p.m. And so obviously, you're preparing, warming up, trying to get everything set so that, by like 1:30, because you have 1 to 2, and in any of these events is generally going to be, a few minutes or whatever. So by like 1:30, you're ready to go. So there's the timing game. Now, Rob versus Steve was the hour block right before mine. And it was a huge unknown because like, okay, we're going to go 600 pounds, 1 for 1, 30 seconds rest or whatever, something like that. But I mean, speculation. Some people think, well, maybe it'll make 20 reps, maybe it'll be 30 reps. I mean, I don't think anyone thought they'd break 60 a piece, but it was still a big unknown. Well, Rob ended up doing, I think, I want to say 65 reps.
Yeah.
And Steve, I think, did 63 reps.
Yeah, I think he did like 63, and then he did his 63rd, and then
Rob did a double on his very last.
Yeah, he did his double on his last one, and their hands after that was like.
Well, Steve's, yeah. I mean, so Steve,
yeah,
there's images of him clipping off big old chunks of skin off his hands and stuff. Well, so Steve's hands were fucked, but Rob's kidneys were also fucked. I mean, so he went to the ER after that.
Yeah, he had what's that?
Where your
body breaks down too much protein.
Right. So he had. And here's an important point on that front is, so people call it rhabdo for short. And in the last year, I've been learning a lot about rhabdo. But in the CrossFit world, people joke about rhabdo, or some people talk about, I had a hard workout, I got the rhabdo. And that's stupid, because actual rhabdomyolysis can kill you.
100%. Your body just goes into this this bad cycle, and it just keeps going.
Right. You're overflowing. You're flooding your kidneys with toxins from muscle breakdown.
Yeah.
And I'll briefly get into why I think the misnomer comes about. But so Rob Hall, after that event, had legitimate rhabdo, where he had to go to the ER and had to have important treatment related to that. What a lot of people don't know is that, so when they test your blood, there's a blood test that determines if you have rhabdomyolysis, and they test for a thing called CPK, which is creatine phosphokinase. And that's a marker that generally tests for muscle breakdown. Now, every lab has different standard ranges, but it's typically, say average level would be like 500 for CPK in a person. Some people say they test you and you're 800. So you're, a little bit, an appreciable amount over the upper limit. Some people say, I've got rhabdomyolysis. Well, clinically, maybe technically you sort of do, but it's not real rhabdomyolysis. The real shit is when you're like in the thousands or the tens of thousands, orders of magnitude above this upper limit. And another thing that a lot of people don't know is that if you have more muscle than most people and you're using that muscle training in some capacity, you will have elevated CPK levels.
100%. Whenever you go get blood tests, they're always like, this is raised. I'm like, well, yeah, I trained yesterday. I did like heavy squats yesterday.
Exactly.
I'm not a small dude. Obviously, it's going to be higher.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think that's where a lot of people come in. And the depressing reality is that the vast majority of doctors don't know anything about athletic training, whether it's nutrition or exercise or anything like that.
I usually send my blood results to a bodybuilder. So is this good or bad?
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's legitimate. I mean, my dad's a physician. My dad's a doctor, and he learns about nutrition and exercise from me. You know what I mean? Like, and he's brilliant. Like, he's brilliant, but he'll tell you, medical school, they don't learn about this stuff. It's not part of the curriculum. And so a lot of people say, well, my doctor told me to eat this. Well, great. I mean, ask your auto mechanic what to eat too, because they have the same amount of training.
I don't think there's not a lot at all training for doctors on nutrition, at least. They might do
maybe in a very perfunctory sense, but I would imagine it's very outdated. I mean, I think this is an example of in the trenches experience versus in the books experience. And so, like, I guarantee there's bodybuilders from the 70s who maybe don't even have a high school diploma, but they have, through trial and error with themselves and with their friends, using supplements, nutrition, training, and whatnot, they learned realities that Ivy League educated doctors never learned, never knew. You know what I mean? And that's, I think, where the experience trumps theory.
Yeah.
A lot of ways.
I follow a lot of like what John Meadows would write about. John Meadows.
Absolutely.
The Mountain Dog, Dante Trudell, Dave Palumbo, that kind of, the older, more experienced and more learned, they've made the effort to learn this stuff and trial and error experience.
Yeah.
But it's hilarious that, like, there's heaps of stuff that comes out in studies, isn't it? But bodybuilders have been doing it for years. You know?
Absolutely. I mean, think about low carbohydrate diets or even ketogenic diets, and then you look at Vince Gironda from 50 plus years ago. He was already using things like that. Like
Stanfordine, obviously the epitome of health, and I think so anyway.
Oh yeah, I mean, Stan's awesome. Stan's the best. And I think another factor that gets overlooked, and it's important now, I mean, especially we're going through a pandemic where a lot of people are citing, studies and research and stuff like that, is another area that kind of diminishes the power of theory or books or studies versus actual experience in reality is what are the ulterior motives behind these studies, behind the research? What are the financial interests that are funding and pushing these selective studies and formulating these studies? You know what I mean? Like, whereas in-person experience or experience that you have with training partners in the gym or things like that, there's no financial motive behind that. It's literally what you're seeing with your own eyes. And I think that speaks much stronger than what some research study far off did, where who knows what company or what special interest is motivating it.
Yeah.
I think
so we sort of went off.
Rise in that. Sorry, Jackson, Karen.
No, I was going to say, sorry, we sort of went off, but I think, were you going to say what Rob's CBK levels were?
Okay,
do you know what they were?
I do. But I mean, I'm not going to say what they were, but they were extremely high. They were
huge. Okay.
Yeah, very, very high. So he absolutely had legitimate rhabdo, and and so I guess how we got on the tangent, but so they're doing this event.
Yeah.
And it's spilling way into my block, so I'm kind of warming up to do my squats, but I'm looking over, and I mean, I want to watch it too. Like that, for my money, that's the greatest event that's ever happened in the animal cage. And there's been a lot of great events. So like I'm warming up and I'm watching that and I'm trying to think, okay, when do I go? But they're still going, and then Rob goes down and then the stretcher comes in with the paramedics and I'm like, oh, I mean, so yeah, no, that was pretty awesome.
I remember that was huge, man. That's like, who does 60 plus reps at 600 pounds? That's ludicrous.
I don't think I do that across a week.
No.
Have you ever done 600 pounds, Greg?
Well, not in one session.
Add up the reps. Add up the reps. A triple at 200 pounds.
Maybe 2 to 3 week period. Yeah. Sandra, you train out of Dan Green's gym. What's that like?
So it's been great. At least before everything got shut down. So I did my first meet February 2014. And the timing was very interesting because it was in the months preceding that was when I had my friends basically telling me to get into powerlifting and to do this meet with them. At the same time, them and a couple other people at the commercial gym I was at were saying like, hey, have you heard of Dan Green? Or, you should go train with Dan Green. And so the name kind of was buzzing in my ear. And then once I did the meet, and enjoyed it and thought I want to get involved in this more, then I went over to his gym and I met him and I joined up, and actually I did a strongman competition there, like as I was signing up, they had a sign up that they were going to have a strongman competition. They're like, you want to do this? And I was like, okay. So, so I signed up for that. But yeah, I mean, it's been great. Like Dan, Dan's awesome. He's become a good friend, mentor, training partner. His whole family, the Greens, very good to me. And the people at the gym, I mean, like I train with like Christy Hawkins, like she's one of my best friends and training partners. And she's just, right now she's at the highest dots, of any raw female powerlifter ever. You know what I mean? Like, and she just did that.
That's crazy. Yeah. You were with her for that meet. Yeah. That was just recently. How was that? That's insane.
Yeah, she and I were just reminiscing about this because the LA Fit Expo in 2015, January 2015 or early February 2015 was we both competed in that together, and she hadn't been training at Boss yet, so that was the first time we actually met. And she was coached by a guy like Max Ada, and I sort of knew Max, and I had done Olympic lifting for a little bit. And Max's wife had done Olympic lifting at the same gym that I had done it at. So there's these weird connections. And I think Max introduced Christy to me at that meet. And so but then it wasn't maybe another year or so until she started coming to Boss Barbell. And Yeah, I mean, right away. I mean, she's a former pro bodybuilder, so already, fantastic physique and great foundation, and she's already moving tremendous weight, great work ethic and discipline too. She's very consistent. And so seeing that over the years, and then we do competitions together, become closer friends, have a lot of stuff in common in and out of the gym. So that kind of just grew just grew organically. And, a huge motivating factor there. I mean, where she, just the weight she moves and the diligence in her training, I think it motivates every single person in the gym for sure. I mean, it crushes egos too. I mean, there's big guys coming in there who she's out squatting, out deadlifting them, out benching them, and guys are just being like, what the?
Just for our listeners, 40-year-old, 75 kilo class, squats in kilos for our listeners. Most of them are kilo, 260 squat, 155 bench, and a 265 deadlift, all at 74.4 kilos. Just madness. That's crazy.
Oh yeah. And she pulled over 600 in training, going ready for that meet. So she tried it for meet.
That's ludicrous.
Yeah. So that meet was great. I mean, because I was coming at the end of a terrible year, 2020, and so it was nice to at least do something nice. And she's, honestly, over the years, she's really supported me a lot. She's done a lot for me. And so it was kind of an opportunity for me to kind of help her a little bit and be her kind of handler at that thing. So it was nice to have that opportunity and just basically witness, greatness. And the meet itself was awesome. I mean, JP Price, Ryan Silva and those folks out there, they got a really cool community, a cool thing going, and it was great to see them and just have fun.
Just on that, Andrew, is one of the questions I wanted to ask you was the US powerlifting landscape. How was it? Because obviously there's a proliferation of federations and so forth. How do you make the choice about where to lift and who to lift for and so forth?
So and so I've never experienced it outside of the United States, and honestly, I've never actually even experienced it really outside of, other than actually her meet, outside of the West Coast. Like all my meets have been either California and Nevada. So out here, I mean, it's funny because I was actually just thinking about it very recently. Like, unfortunately, there's not like a consolidated event database. You know what I mean? Like open powerlifting is fantastic as far as all the numbers and the statistics, but it'd be nice if there was one thing that combined all the federations and just said, hey, for January, February, March, these are all the meets and all the locations, and pick and choose where you want to go. USPA, as far as I can tell, seems to be the biggest one. So like you go to their website and they'll list all their events, and they do have a lot of events. It's a huge federation across the country. So I mean, that had generally been my go-to. WRPF is kind of coming onto the scene, but they're international. So like, there's stuff outside of the States. Then there's a lot of other federations. I did 2 meets that were SPF, so there's that. I judged a meet that was UPA. So there's RPS, I think. I mean, it's hard to keep track of.
Lots of acronyms. It's almost like government departments.
Totally. And I've been fortunate, where, in California, like there's going to be meets, whether in NorCal or SoCal, or even in Vegas. Like, so whereas if I was in maybe the middle of Tennessee, it might be a bit more of a issue of trying to find, where the good meets are. But, it's one other thing among the many things that, the pandemic messed up was I was going to come out to Australia.
I was going to ask if you had been invited. You had been invited to Pro Rock?
Yeah, so we can do Warriors, October 31st. Yeah,
as part of Big Dogs.
Yeah. Oh, this is the 110 class.
115.
Yeah, and so 115. Yeah, so Markopoulos, like I've been connected with him on social media for a while, and and he's invited me out to his events, and I've always wanted to. I've really just over the years on social media kind of connected with some Australian, I guess, in New Zealand. I mean, you guys are like really closely connected, right? I mean, like,
well, depends on the sport, but yeah.
Depends who you ask.
All right. Yeah. I didn't want to like say the wrong thing, but like,
no, there's nothing. No, we're just kidding. We're a 3-hour. It's a 3-hour plane ride. From Sydney to Auckland. So we are close. Yeah.
Yeah. So it just, from my impression, it had been that, within that area, so kind of just call it down under.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
So the down under, Australia, New Zealand. It seems like the U.S. has a big powerlifting scene. It seems like Russia has a big powerlifting scene. It seems like Australia, New Zealand has a big powerlifting scene. And obviously other countries too. But and I've never been anywhere close to that part of the world. So I'd already blocked off, gotten approved for vacation time from work for that time in August, and I was going to come out and compete and then spend a couple of weeks just checking out things. But obviously that didn't happen. But yeah, Marcus has reached out to me. He's been very inviting, other Australian lifters, and I've met some who've come out here, like Crozier, was out here.
Yeah.
He's the first guy who mentioned Warriors to me, and I'm a fan of Dylan Hellriegel and all that, and so. And also, I've always, even before I got into powerlifting, I've been a fan of the Lily Bridges, and then Eric's out there and in Australia. So I've just felt drawn to come out to that part of the world.
The across the ditch, the pro raw event. I've been to Pro Raw, which was his event before Big Dogs and Warriors came about. Mm-hmm. I've been over to do Pro Raw 3 times now, and they hold it at the Arnold's in Australia.
Oh yeah,
it's the powerlifting event there, and it's huge, man. It's the biggest stage there. Everyone people will go to the expo just to watch that. It has a bigger crowd than the amateur bodybuilding and stuff at the expo. It's crazy.
Well, I think I saw when Dylan squatted 1,000 there, Arnold was standing right next to it.
Yeah, that was when he did that 1,900. He pulled 900 as well. That was
exactly. Yeah, the first person to ever do that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a big dude, man, as well. I met him at that pro raw. I was there. I was in the 125s to the 275s, and he's a big dude.
Yeah,
he's a big unit, but he still speaks real quietly.
Yeah.
You expect people to be big and have a loud voice. Yeah. And he's like, oh yeah, hey, because I'm quite good mates with his coach Thomas.
Okay.
And Thomas is like, oh yeah, this is Dylan. He's been lifting for 2 years, and I was like, fuck off. And then I said, oh hey, I'm Jackson today. He said, oh hi, I'm Dylan. He's just real softly spoken. He was just sitting there minding his own business. Yeah.
Oh wow.
But definitely, man. Honestly, get out to that event. Obviously, when things open up.
Yeah.
Which who knows when? But
possibly not this year. But
probably not this year. Yeah.
See how it goes.
I'm in it for the long haul, so
still young force to be reckoned with.
Are you still training then?
Yeah, it's been harder, it's finding places, garage gyms and other little things, just ways to go about it. The United States is very everyone knows now we're very divided, and not just politically.
I've heard a rumor. Did hear the rumor.
You did hear the rumor, yeah. But even just geographically, as far as there's some states that are very, very open and some states that are very, very closed, and California happens to be one of the ones that is extremely closed. Yeah, and so it's. People are trying to make do. I feel terrible for a lot of small business owners, gym owners, and all kinds of other businesses that are getting squeezed. Because not only is it closed, it's also at a very freaking expensive state to be in, rent wise and all that. So
yeah,
it's
I hear a lot. I hear stories of people leaving California.
Huge exodus out of the state. Yeah.
Lots of people have gone down to Texas.
Yeah. I think Texas is one of the popular destinations. Tennessee, Idaho, Wyoming, Florida, Nevada, Arizona. Those are all getting tons of Californians.
Is that
almost everywhere else then, huh?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Is that because they're more open? Not quite as restrictive?
I think that's part of it. I think the openness in and of itself isn't the big thing as much as it's emblematic of the overall.
Scene,
What was that?
Is it the political scene that's driving that?
Politics, yeah. I think
it's a Democrat state, isn't it?
Right. I think California being as closed off as it is for the pandemic is just one symptom of kind of the politics of the state in general that is driving people away. So and then money obviously is a big thing where California has very high taxes. So a lot of those states people are going to have much lower taxes, much lower cost of living, much lower cost of housing. So lower crime rates, that's another big thing. So, yeah.
That's a whole different podcast, I think.
I was gonna say, yeah, that would start like another 4-hour podcast.
Didn't want to talk about that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, fascinating topic. Obviously, we pay attention to what's going on and over here, but I think we'll save that. So, what's next for you, Andrew? What's the plans you got to get through this year? And obviously, you want to hit some big numbers, 2021 or late 20. What are we now? 21, late 2021 or early 22. You've got some big goals in mind, or are we just going to play it by ear?
I'd say a combination of those two things. I mean, my strength now, I had a few surgeries in the mid to late part of the last year. So it's been a kind of long, slow recovery on those ends. And then that plus the shutdown and other things where, my strength is not anywhere close to where, it's been in the past. So, but I mean, it is what it is. And it's unpredictable. I mean, will things be open at the end of this year? I don't know for competitions wise. But yeah, no, I mean, my goals really don't change. It's, I want to get the total record back at 242 in sleeves. I want to try for it in wraps again. That's where I've lost to Yuri Belkin a couple times. I'd like to go after the squat world record in both sleeves and wraps. Obviously, Kevin is kind of head and shoulders above everyone in sleeves at this point. But lofty goals are where it's at. And so with the bench press thing, I mean that, I fantasize about getting my bench press back over 500 pounds. You know what I mean? That's the thing, with having with my arm, yes, that tricep will never be the same, but I mean, my thought is, well, I can still build up both pecs. I can build up both shoulders. I can, hopefully do enough to compensate or overcompensate for that shortcoming and get it back and maybe even go above where it's at. I don't know. I mean, I try and keep hope, I mean, without hope, we have nothing. And so,
exactly. No, that's good. Yeah.
And so at least get my numbers back to where they were and then go from there.
Okay. Well, we wish you all the best for those goals. Now, before we go, do you want to do any shout outs to sponsors?
Yeah, shameless plugs.
Plugs.
Get in.
Family.
Yeah.
Get in.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get shameless. No. So
go
there's
nuts.
a fun TV show. I don't know if you guys get the show Shameless out there. It's a funny show we have out here. But no. So first and foremost, Animal. Animalpack.com. I've been with them for several years now. I love that company, and what I always tell people too is, if you like the sport of powerlifting or any sport for that matter, and you want to support it, you support the companies that support the sport. And I think no other company supports powerlifting and powerlifters as much as Animal, and so, yeah, I mean, and they actually just redid the website too, which is pretty cool. And so they've got athlete profiles, and obviously you see all the products, and they're always coming out with new things and changing formulations to make things better. So I think the world of the company, and they've flown me out to their headquarters. So I've seen behind the scenes stuff, which is, that's important to me too. You see the what's on the surface, but then when you go deeper in, and everyone behind the scenes is really cool too. And it's this small town in northern New Jersey, basically, which has all the universal and animal stuff, and it's been a staple in that town for decades. And it's just pretty cool seeing that. Awesome. Some people that work there, their whole family works for the company, so that's, I really appreciate everything they've done for me. Boss Barbell Club, obviously the gym I train at, under Dan Green. Mark Bell, I mentioned him way at the beginning, but I use Slingshot products, and he just puts out so much cool content. And his website, actually, markbell.com, I'm on there. There's a whole segment that I was pretty privileged to be part of. Ed Cohn stands on there. He's getting more people. Joe Sullivan, I think, was on it recently.
Awesome.
Jay Cutler.
Oh, wow.
And then last of all, Elite FTS. So, I'm in my house right now, and one of my projects for 2021. So here's another goal outside of just numbers wise is kind of building a home gym. And and a lot of people are doing that, obviously.
Yes,
now
that's said almost every powerlifter, I think, since the pandemic started.
Got
to get a home gym.
Yep. And so I got to create some space and probably strengthen the flooring in here. But Elite FTS, that's once I have things situated in order to put equipment in, awesome. It's going to be through Elite FTS. I mean, they have just awesome equipment. I mean, everybody knows that. And then Dave Tate, who runs Lee FTS, he's kind of been one of my like heroes in the sport for a long time now. He was just a good all around human, which I appreciate.
That's awesome.
Like that.
How do so if people want to follow your lifting, where do they go?
So for me, I'm not super social media savvy, but Instagram is really the thing. So Herbietheluvbug, it's LUV, spelling of love.
Yeah,
all one word. Herbietheluvbug on Instagram is me.
I'm sure there's a story there.
When I tell people to like that we're having Andrew, they're like, who? What? Who is that? I'm like Herbietheluvbug. They're like, that guy. Yeah, I know who that is. Yeah.
Well, so here's the story behind that is so, my last name's Herbert, and so Herbie just by itself has been a nickname for a long time. And the funny story that I didn't even know until a few years ago when I told my dad about. My dad's not on social media, but I was like, hey, so Herbietheluvbug is my social media thing, and I was showing him some stuff, and he was like, oh, in high school his nickname was Herbie the Bear. Dad's kind of a big guy, and he's an athlete, he's a wrestler, and so so it's just funny, Herbietheluvbug, Herbie the Bear. But my ex, maybe back in 2014, got me on it. It was like, you need to get on Instagram, and I was like, I'm not gonna, it's not, But she's like, no. So I gave her my phone. She set up an Instagram account or whatever. I was like, well, you need a name or something like that. And in my mind, I thought, well, this isn't going to be anything big. I'll just come up with something stupid, And so I said, Herbietheluvbug, and I think I typed it in and realized the LOVE, the normal spelling was taken. So I was like, okay, LUV, I'll just be Herbietheluvbug. And, but then as it picked up, it kind of, it took on a life of its own, and now it is what it is. And I like it though too. I mean, I think
that's great.
It's a lot too many people get maybe
too serious.
Yeah, too serious.
Yeah.
Like, destroyer, crusher. Just like, it's like okay, we're life's not that serious. Like we're lifting some weight. Like exactly. let's just be.
We're not saving the world.
Lighthearted.
They take themselves a bit seriously. So like, yeah.
We're not curing COVID at the moment, so
no, exactly.
We're just lifting big weights.
I thought it was because of if you've seen that movie Herbie, and it's the bug.
Yeah, well, no,
that's what I thought it was.
That's where it comes from, Which,
right.
Full disclosure, I've never seen that movie. I've just heard about it, and people have sent me like images, of the car, the bug named Herbie with the number 53 on it, I think. But yeah, that's just I don't know much about it beyond that. It is a cartoon animated movie or whatever.
Yeah. All right, man. Awesome. Thanks for coming on, folks at home. You want to follow Herbietheluvbug on Instagram? Go for it. We'll chuck it in all in the comments below as well, and also Andrew's other sponsors as well. So if you want to go and check them out, Animal Pack, like FTS, and so forth. Andrew, awesome, man. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, guys.
No worries. I hope you had a good time.
I did. Thanks for coming on.
All right. Thank you.
Good stuff.